So now comes to the special time in the morning where I get the pleasure and the privilege to introduce our keynote speaker. So this morning we're privileged to be joined by an influential and passionate local speaker, Professor Ingeborg Plackle. Professor Plackle is a teacher educator for general subjects in vocational education at PXL University College and is Professor of Teacher Education at the Rijksuniversiteit Brussels. Amongst her many achievements in the sector, she was chair of the Association of Teacher Educators of Flanders, the VELOV, from 2015 to 2022. Co-initiator of the Flemish Training for Teachers and Educators and is vice chair of the board of directors of the school group Adite. Last year, she co-designed together with local teacher educators and Ministry of Education a professionalization program for educational leaders in secondary education in Suriname. Her research focuses on learning environments in vocational education and professionalization of teacher teams and educators. And she wrote her doctoral dissertation on powerful learning environments in vocational secondary education. So, in another powerful learning environment with us today, we are delighted to be able to welcome Professor Plackle to share with us her presentation, Building Bridges, Collaborative Approaches to Powerful Learning Environments in Vocational Education. So with our warmest thanks and a great big EAPRIL welcome, I give you Professor Inge Plackle.
Mute this one. Mag even laten voor je PowerPoint. Hoppakee. Op het rechterpijltje klikken. Hè?
Ja, zo. Thank you for the kind introduction and the warm welcome. I'm encouraged by the conference team, the network works, fostering authentic learning and community engagement. To make the network work is all about building bridges. In this presentation, I will explore how we can build these bridges, bridges of connection, collaboration, and shared responsibility in vocational education. I invite you to travel back in time with me to my early career 30 years ago. I was a general subject teacher in special vocational education in De Richter, in Genk, a city close by. I worked hard to build connections, to establish a foundation of trust and support, but I struggled to find the kinds of learning environments that would truly help my students succeed. That was my starting point, taking time to understand student needs and how to best support them. Later, as a teacher educator here at PXL, I guided student teachers in their teaching practice. Once, when I visited a student teacher, his mentor commented on his practice as follows. "He's such a great student teacher. He encourages his students. He involves every single student. His lessons are that inviting. Impressive. Because this is a very difficult student group. They are not here to learn. They are disengaged. I give up. I work with the students that are still here to learn." This comment struck me. It made me reflect on how we, as educators, often explain disengagement and failure as a result of student deficiencies, lack of motivation, lack of engagement. But what if this view is limiting? What if we need to look more closely at the practices we use and how they might be contributing to student success? Now, let's move from deficit to equity and shift our perspective. we must challenge the deficit mindset that still often prevails in education. The idea that students' failure is due to a lack of effort, motivation, or ability. Instead, we need to adopt an equity-minded approach, one that invites us to reflect on our own roles in shaping student success. We need to ask, how can we, as educators and researchers, take a shared responsibility for student learning? Now, to foster rich learning environments, we need to listen to our students, understand their realities, and co-create learning experience to engage them. This mind shift shift in mindset from placing responsibility solely on students to embracing more a shared responsibility has the power to transform education. In order to adapt such shared responsibility, the challenge is to develop a language, a shared language of learning and scholarship that builds bridges between teacher-educators, teachers, and researchers. So our main goal is now to contribute to more equity in education by empowering practitioners to focus collaboratively on learning and teaching in such a way that teacher teams and students with shared responsibility can improve effective teaching practices and create the most powerful learning experiences for every student. And as a result, we can improve student engagement and achievement in vocational education. Now, let's have a look at the situation on vocational education at this moment. In vocational education, we face huge challenges in Flanders. Student achievement is poor. The majority of students in vocational education come from underprivileged backgrounds, often facing significant barriers to success. And on top of that, too often, they receive lower learning quality learning experiences compared to their peers in more academic tracks. Equity in education means ensuring that these students receive the most powerful, engaging learning environments. Environments that challenge them, that give them the tools to succeed. Our research focuses on this issue. We've developed a model for powerful learning environments in pre-vocational education. These are environments designed to foster complex skills, deep understanding, and metacognitive abilities, all being rooted in authentic learning, real-life context. The components of these environments, high expectations, challenging tasks, and meaningful learning experiences are interconnected. Teachers in vocational education who set high expectations also offer more authentic tasks, and vice versa. This model, we named Toppers, is a step toward creating a shared understanding of what makes a powerful learning environment in pre-vocational education and how we can work collaboratively to create them for every student. Helene van Petegem, our doctoral student at Vrije Universiteit Brussel and KU Leuven, will present the Toppers model, which she developed together with Charlotte Arnoux. Thank you.
I will take maybe the microphone. Yes, hi. Thank you, Inge, to give time for the Toppers model that I created together with Inge and Charlotte. That is based on a systematic literature review we did in 2022. And we called it Toppers, or Teaching Principles for Powerful Education for Struggling Students. This framework shows you 14 effective teaching principles specifically for struggling students in grades 5 to 8. And it consists of three bigger gears, or the biggest gear can be seen as the learning environment as such, where a safe, supportive and positive learning environment is crucial to activate or to implement the teaching principles within this learning environment. And I think, or I believe, that these principles are not that new or invented principles, as you can see. But a special attention maybe is to look at the challenging learning activities in authentic contexts and higher order thinking and complex skills, because sometimes, too often, we think that students that are struggling can only do more basic skills, but it's especially important for struggling students to also focus on higher order thinking and complex skills, as it gives them the opportunity to learn more and better, and to encourage students to think critically, to collaborate, and to plan and reflect on their own learning, for example. Still, the tasks need to be challenging for these students, and preferably in authentic contexts, with authentic materials, for example. Then the other gear is the teacher as a facilitator, where we have three principles that are important. You see high expectations, pedagogical content knowledge, and teachers' beliefs, because the teacher's vision, how they think about learning, their teacher's self-efficacy has an influence on how they behave, or what the learning opportunities they provide in the learning environment. And specifically, again, for struggling students, it's important to have or to maintain high expectations and to create challenging curriculum, especially for struggling students. And you need a pedagogical content knowledge, so the pedagogical knowledge and your content knowledge, to create a powerful learning environment. The teacher team is also the third gear in this Toppers model, because a teacher cannot be seen as a lonely person to create a powerful learning environment, but you need the teacher team to create a powerful learning environment where a high collegiality, difficult word, and collaboration is needed to create a powerful learning environment, and where we can try to professionalize teachers, more specifically for pre-vocational education, to create powerful learning environments. Another thing that I want to point out is we specifically design it as gears, as these principles are interdependent, or you need to see them systematically, where you can't pick one teaching principle and think, okay, now I have my powerful learning environment, I did it well. No, they are you need to look at them as a synergy, where when you focus on one, you can have an influence on other principles as well. And it's the combination of all that creates the powerful learning environments. And there's still free space. After all, education is embedded in society, in politics, in culture. And it's important to also look at education within this broader perspective, and to look at, for example, technological developments. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you very much, Helena. Now we have the Toppers model. Its principles are essential to building a professional culture of teaching in our schools. When comparing cultures of teaching in schools in Finland and Sweden, in relation to school performance, we see that better student outcomes are achieved in cultures of teaching that value decision-making and control by the teachers themselves, and where authority is based on the quality of professional education and experience. Now, in our research, we further elaborated on these variables, and we added author features, meaning teacher background, such as degree, certificates, and experiences, and inner features, including collaboration with colleagues and effective teaching practice. We investigated whether a professional culture of teaching, including recruiting well-qualified teachers, fostering effective teacher collaboration, and encouraging effective teaching practices, could be the key to student success. We focused on how strong the professional cultures of teaching is in vocational education in Flanders and how differences in this culture affect student achievement. Now, national achievement tests on functional language skills and mathematical skills and information processing were administered to more than 3,300 students in 116 secondary schools offering vocational education across Flanders. Their teachers completed an online questionnaire about their collaboration and their effective practices. The results indicate a poor academic achievement in Flanders. Less than 40% of the students reach the minimum goals for language and mathematical skills. We also noticed that most teachers in vocational education have limited experiences. This refers to a high teacher turnover, what makes it very difficult to schools to build instructional capacity, to build a shared knowledge or a shared language. For me, it's barely acceptable that teachers who need the most support themselves have to provide support for students with the highest needs. Now, next, very few teachers reported providing authentic and challenging learning tasks. This aligns with international studies which show that students from lower socioeconomic backgrounds often get a less rigorous curriculum. This can lead to a self-fulfilling prophecy, and we know that a rigorous curriculum with an ambitious content is important, regardless of any academic track. We also found hope. Teachers who worked in a collaborative teaching practice reported providing more powerful learning environments for their students. However, in sum, we had to conclude that in many schools, a professional culture of teaching is not yet a reality. We apply for a continual support in building up a professional culture of teaching to prevent teachers from leaving. And within such a culture, teachers' professional growth will thrive. To facilitate this process, the toppers model that Helene just presented offers a research-based framework and language for teams to reflect on current and future teaching practices. Therefore, we integrated toppers in a professional development program for teachers. In this study, we looked at the extent to which teachers' beliefs and expectations change after participating in a professional development program. 8 schools participated in this one-year program, about 30 teachers in total. Each school formed a collaborative design team of teachers supported by a broker, a teacher educator, to co-design curriculum materials and strategies to enhance classroom practices based on the principles of the toppers framework. The program included content sessions and had a clear focus on raising teacher expectations. During the program, teachers were invited to observe and reflect on their behaviors through lesson recordings and discussions with their teams. These processes were facilitated by the broker. Now, the results indicated significant increases in teacher self-efficacy in classroom management, but a modest to non-significant improvement on teacher self-efficacy related to their beliefs and instructional strategies. Now, let's have a closer look at the professional development program and talk with Helene van Petegem and dan van Freuenhoven to discuss the learning process within the traject. Helene en dan. Welkom. Eline, what was your role during the professional development program? Can you explain that a little?
So I had two roles, maybe. One, I was a broker in one school, in one participating school. And on the other hand, I was a coordinator or something to design the professional development program and evaluate it together with the research group. Yeah.
Okay. Now, looking to the results, we saw changes in belief in a positive way, but the results were not that significant. Yeah, can you have an explanation for that?
Yeah, so we saw significant positive effects for teacher self-efficacy in classroom management, and it's not surprising because all teacher teams needed to pick out one inquiry question where they focused on during the whole school year, and all teacher teams decided to focus specifically on classroom management and to work on classroom management during the whole school year. And classroom management is also one principle in the Toppers framework. So it's normal or not surprising that they believe that they got better or improved their classroom management at the end of the professional development program. But we saw positive effects for other teachers' beliefs, and they were also very positive about the professional development program. So they believe that they professionally grown after the PD program, but not significantly for teacher expectations and collective teacher efficacy, because I think it's also one school year that we did a test, a post-test, and most teacher teams still need to implement what they developed the next school year. So I believe that their success experiences are still happening or were not finished when we asked them about their collective teacher efficacy and teacher self-efficacy. So I think they need to have more time to experience a success after the PD program, and maybe have multiple cycles of collaborative design teams and looking at how they can collaboratively create powerful learning environments to really have a significant effect on that.
Thank you, Aline. Now, what did you experience as a main factor of success?
According to the teachers, their most successful experience was the collaborative design team. So really taking the time to collaborate with colleagues, to focus on one specific inquiry question together with the broker. And they all said that the broker was especially important because after the PD program, the PD program ended, so the broker is not anymore in the schools, and they really were most of them were sad about it, that the broker couldn't come back to the school, because for them it was a new person within the team to bring new expertise and new knowledge to the team, and they really liked that part.
So the broker was a really success factor. At this moment, we have a broker with us. Anne, you are a colleague from me also. You are teacher educator here at PEXL. What was your role in the design team?
Well, in the presentation, you call it a broker. I would like to add building bridges. That was my role. I built a bridge between research and the schools. I had 4 schools that I did the follow-up of them. So my task was following up their path, keeping the overview. What did they want to go to? What did they already achieved? What were the next steps in the process? That was mainly the role I had in the program.
Okay. How did you experience the learning collaborating within the program? And how did you try to work on professional growth with the teachers?
Well, I see 2 different types. You have the collaboration in the team itself. And then if I look at the 4 schools, there's a big difference. There were schools where the teachers were volunteering and they wanted to participate in the projects. There were schools where the management said, you have to take part of the team. And so the dynamic was really different in the 4 schools. Within the teams that succeed and that made to the end, you saw a really good collaboration between the different subjects because the teachers all gave different subjects. And so you saw really growth on that part, thinking together, co-creating something. We had also the aim to facilitate the collaboration between the schools, and that we have to say we didn't succeed at that point. It's very hard. If you talk with the teachers, that was something they look forward to. Oh yeah, different schools in a different city, different context, with the same issues, the same problems. But in reality, it was very hard to bring them together. We have chosen online meetings. And in the end, if you look at the evaluation, lots of teachers said, oh, it would have been nice to meet each other physically, and then there would be more collaboration between the schools.
Between the schools, okay. What did you experience as a main factor of success in this project?
I think the lesson I've also already learned is making little steps. The teams were very with big ideas. In October, they wanted to reach lots of things. But if you size it down and you make little steps, you can celebrate those little steps, and you can also put in context and literature, for example, just at the right time. When a team struggled with something, I could bring it on at that moment. And so the teachers also saw, oh, that's why we are learning this. Now we need those inputs. Now we need those contents. And that was very important for the teachers I worked with.
Thank you. Maybe Helene, did you also experience a challenge during the trajectory?
The trajectory had different parts. So you had the collaborative design team, but then as well, we tried to convince the teacher teams to observe each other in the classroom practice, to look at the implementation and to see if it needed to be changed, to evaluate what they implemented, and also to record their lessons, to reflect in a joint discussion with the team about their classroom practice. And that was very difficult for me then, as a coordinator, to convince them to do this, because there was a lot of, there were some teachers that were really afraid of filming themselves and be observed by others and to reflect on it. So I think maybe it's because in their past experience they see observations and lesson recordings as an evaluation. And for this part, it was not an evaluation. It needed to be a reflection and to talk with colleagues about it. And some teachers did it and they really liked it. They saw it as a learning opportunity rather than an evaluation. So I think, again, you need to have a success experience for taking this or seeing this as a learning opportunity. And with these teams, they were not used to do this. So this was very difficult or a challenge to try it.
Yeah, and it's all about learning, of course. Okay, thank you, Helene and Anne. But the work doesn't stop in the classroom. Let's build bridges between students, student teachers, and this time, local community. Building bridges also means connecting schools with the wider community, local businesses, social institutions, and student families. We bring the real world into the learning environment and create opportunities for students to engage in authentic learning. One example is our Desiderata project, where student and student teachers collaborated with artistic partners to address climate change through a community service project. Vulnerable young people express their concerns and solutions about climate change through artistic forms of work. It's about giving students a voice in their learning and showing them they can make a difference. Now, you can see where Desiderata stands for, design thinking as an inclusive method to engage vulnerable groups, reach, and transformative learning. Although the project was very engaging for students and our student teachers, and also for me as a teacher educator, we faced challenges. For instance, students and student teachers aren't used thinking from the students' perspective themselves and give them a voice in their education. An example. The work of the vocational students was awarded and all students were invited to present their work at an art exhibition at the Beaux-Arts. The Beaux-Arts is a well-known art center in the center of Brussels. Our student teacher announced this during their project work. There was a lively, positive atmosphere, but the class became suddenly very quiet. One student raised his hand and asked, "Are we allowed to enter the Beaux-Arts?" Our student teacher replied with the most empowering comment, "What would the Beaux-Arts be without your work?" And the positive atmosphere returned immediately. Now, students with a lower socioeconomic background are often not familiar with visiting exhibitions. Collaborating with artists helps widen their perspectives and forms an engaging learning environment for them. This was a successful project, but I have to admit that more structural collaboration between schools and the local community is not a reality yet. And now I have a question for you. How would you further invest in supporting bridges between student teachers and the local community? You can see our students. Now, let's build bridges between vet schools and the labor market. In vocational education, we must also build stronger connections between schools and the labor market. Teachers and students benefit when they work with real clients, work on authentic vocational tasks, and experience the workplace firsthand. In this study, we focused on boundary crossing between secondary vocational education schools and the labor market to enhance learning and engagement for vocational students. And in this case, we explored how boundary crossing can take place, how the actors experience it, and what challenges they face. We'll now present briefly a case on collaboration in a community called Publicity. In this community, general subject teachers and practical teachers share the responsibility for student learning in the direction publicity. Teachers bring real-life tasks into the learning environment, for example, by inviting external clients to briefing sessions. This increases student engagement, as this teacher explained. You can really feel that they are proud when they do the window stickering of the city. It's much nicer for them than doing it here at school. But the school had also its challenges. At the start of the community working, the school encountered resistance and adjustment problems from students, teachers, and parents. They put strong emphasis on communicating with these partners about the vision around this, like this coordinator explained. But that has been by trial and error. It has been a quiet process. What has been very important is that we took the time to create a vision and that we were behind that vision with the whole teaching team. And finally, we will strengthen the ties between school and workplaces by professionalization of teachers and mentors to realize powerful learning environments for a sustainable transition. Now we can finally combine the different studies, and they come together in an upcoming professional development program for teachers, mentors, bringing together schools and companies, and both local and on an international level in various disciplines. Teachers and mentors from companies will cross boundaries and will form extended teams and work together in different professional roles. Strengthening the ties between schools and workplaces by crossing the boundaries is necessary to fully share the responsibility of the learning of students. We urge for the alignment of several stakeholders' perspectives during long-term, inquiry-based collaboration to co-design powerful, authentic learning environments for their students. The focus on the students, on the learning of the students, connects all participants and strengthens learning at different levels. The implication of such a collaborative approach asks for building bridges and close partnerships between schools, teacher education, and social economic stakeholders. Now, in sum, to build strong bridges of support that make equity truly accessible for all students, we must work together within our schools, alongside our communities, and in partnership with socio-economic stakeholders. And by holding high expectations and fostering powerful learning environments, we can ensure that every student has an opportunity to succeed. To make the network works is all a matter of building bridges. We keep on moving in that direction. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Questions?
Yes, thank you very much for your presentation. Does anybody have any questions for Inge? Anybody raise their hands? Or not? Oh yes, we have a question over there. Thank you. Yeah, they have it there.
I'll stand up and use my teacher voice. I'm intrigued by one of the results that you shared, which is that there was a difficulty in enabling different schools to communicate between themselves. Did you, in your discussion following this result, which was probably a little bit disappointing, but quite realistic and understandable, put together any kind of solution for a subsequent project which could facilitate intra-institutional collaboration?
Now, in the future, in the next project, we will focus also on that, and we will integrate also visitations of schools and really look at the different practices within the school. So we will further incorporate that in the project as well. So it will be a part of the project to go looking and learning also at the other schools and visiting those schools. So we will we will visit them and learn from each other. Yeah. So we learn from that. Yeah. Thank you.
Any further questions for Inge? Before we yes, we have two. There's a gentleman at the back and then down at the front.
Perhaps a bit specific, but I was triggered by a colleague, I'm afraid I forgot her name, that you were filming teachers, and some teachers were hesitant to work with you because they were afraid to be filmed. How did you work with that?
How did I cope with it? That
Yes.
they were afraid? Yeah.
Yes.
We had an online session where we talked about how to observe colleagues and how these joint reflections were planned out during these collaborative design teams. And I made a video to talk about it and to really say it's not the point to evaluate each other. It's to look at each other's classroom with a checklist, or we also created a classroom observation tool of toppers to have them to provide a checklist where they could observe several teaching principles. But in my experience, it was also depending on each teacher team, whether they were very motivated to participate in the first place with the professional development program or not. And if there was a positive atmosphere within the teacher team, or there were sometimes teachers within the team that were more negative and dragged down, like, how do you say it? Like, influenced the positive environment within these teams. So I saw that mostly it was in the teams where there was more negative atmosphere that they didn't want to do that. Yeah.
Okay, so you could not persuade them, some of them?
No, not all, no.
Thank you very much.
So a positive and safe learning environment is very important to do this. And we can also say that we also integrated video-stimulated recall in our teacher program. So, and we hope that after some years, teachers will be more open to reflect together on their own practices. I think in the Netherlands, it's more common that people discuss their lessons based on video-stimulated recall, I think. No? So we're working on that also. So, but the safe and positive environment is very important to realize this, yeah.
Thank you. And I think there was a question down the front. Yes, Zarina at the front, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that very interesting presentation. I do have a question. I'm a bit curious. You have your 3 cogwheels in the toppers model, the largest of which has the student in the middle and is linked to the learning environment. How did you identify which elements of the learning environment have the largest influence? And did you at any time ask the students what they felt contributed to successful learning?
I will first answer, and then I'll give it to Helene, because Helene has done the work after the framework. Now, this model builds on a model I created for my PhD, and it was about powerful learning environments in vocational education. And there I started with focus group with students. So I get a student voice at that point. And in my earlier model, also the student is a center, and the student is a person where the learning environment is adapted on. So the student was also very central on that part. And I've done focus groups with students, and those principles are also very important in their perception. Except one, it was about differentiation. Vocational students didn't think that differentiation was very important for good education, because I think about differentiation as something as when I'm ready with my work, I can do some more work. So that was the thoughts that some students had about differentiation. So that could be a possible explanation why students in vocational education didn't think that differentiation was appropriate for their learning. But I will give it also to Elina.
Yeah, I think you explained it very well already. But I thought that your question was also how did we find these teaching principles? Identified it, yeah. So it was a best fit framework synthesis, meaning that we first looked at general frameworks that were already existing to create powerful learning environments, and we found all these principles already in these frameworks. And then we looked in a systematic way, intervention studies where there was a positive effect on students' non-cognitive or cognitive outcomes, specifically for struggling students. So we try to identify or describe the students in pre-vocational education by struggling or to have a learning deficit and so on, and looked for interventions specifically for this target group. And then we took the principles that these interventions were focusing on, and where there was a positive effect or positive significant effect, we integrated them in the model. But we didn't do a meta-analysis, so we don't know which teaching principles are more effective than others. We try to look at it more systemically, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. And question at the back?
Thank you for the presentation. I had a quick glance on your toppers model, and the one thing that surprises me that there was no technology involved. Maybe I saw it wrong. And you mentioned the pedagogical content knowledge framework, but not the technology part in it, TPAC. So I'm curious, or is it not necessary for that target group?
Yes, of course, innovation and technology is very important. Also in our project that's coming up, we focus really on digital learning materials and digital learning. So it's a part of it, but it can be a part of it, but it's not explained as a separated principle. Yeah.
Thank you. Any last questions? Yes, there's a gentleman here. Oh, well caught. Well done, sir.
Okay, you mentioned at the start of your presentation that one of the challenges in developing these kind of learning communities was the large teacher turnover in these schools. So I guess two questions. One, why do you think that turnover is particularly high in the vocational education sector? And second one is there anything we can do about that?
Yes, it's a real problem in vocational education. I'm also a teacher educator in Brussels, and directors call me and they tell me if I would look at their school at that moment, most students will be outside and not in the classrooms because they just have no teachers. So, and we also see that a lot of vocational teachers, also from Limburg, work in Brussels, but now because of the teacher shortage also here, they come back, and so the shortage in Brussels is it's extremely high. So, and under that conditions, it's very hard to build up a professional capital. So yeah. But we think if those teams are supported and get support from each other, that less teachers will leave those schools, and then we can very slowly build up a professional capital also in the schools with the highest needs. Yeah. And we also see that my students, they just graduated, they become teachers with in schools with students with the highest needs. So it's very hard to see that, and those teachers, they leave their job within a few years because it's too hard for them. They're just beginners. They have to learn a lot. So it's a.
Okay, thank you. If that's the end of the questions, I'd just like to thank Inge for her presentation today. We do have a small gift of our appreciation for you, but thank you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.